When you think about meal kit companies, what do you see? Probably long, complicated recipes and subscriptions you can't escape. But with the new Blue Apron, we're doing meal delivery differently. No subscription needed. Faster, easier meals. And the same dedication to quality we've always had. Shop 100+ meals at blueapron.com. Get 50% off your first 2 orders with code APRON50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
So, Wayne, you were at last night's game. I was eating my breakfast here in Seattle, and I nearly choked on my cornflakes. Do you enjoy your pie? Was that good while watching what United served up?
Well, I think I would have preferred to have been in Seattle, I'll be honest. The weather wasn't as bad as the Burnley game, and that was what everyone was talking about beforehand, because it was rotten for Burnley. It was really rotten. So everyone, we were talking, I had a opportunity to meet someone I'd known online for maybe more than 10 years, much like yourself, actually. The first time I'd ever met him in person was before the game, and he'd come up for the game with his 2 sons from London, and we were talking, and my wife mentioned in passing something like, "Oh, the mood around the ground seems a lot more optimistic than it was against Burnley," because obviously we were following the Newcastle game and everything like that. So actually, yeah, going into it, I was feeling a little bit optimistic, and I don't know what it was, but before there was a rumor like 3 hours before kickoff that Jones was going to play. I know that rumor was 24 hours, but then it really intensified like 3 hours before kickoff. Oh, Phil Jones going to be playing. Then he turned up and everything like that. In the squad he was pictured, so you knew that he was going to be in the team, and everyone was really optimistic about it. I mean, the reception for him was fantastic.
Yes,
and, I joined in that, by the way. Definitely I have a lot more respect for his journey, especially since I learned about the fact that his injury was the same as the one that Ollie had, and I had a lot more respect for the fact of his journey after that, rather than just thinking, oh, he's always injured, why is he still picking up a wage, when he was given the new contracts and everyone was concerned about that. But then in the sort of time between applauding his selection and the game kicking off and the first couple, I know he got a real big applause for his first clearance and his first pass and everything, but then he made a couple of
good for him.
A couple of rusty things, and then I started to think, well, the last time Phil Jones played for us, it was a 2-0 defeat against Burnley, and the time before that, he was brought off against Sheffield United, and the time before that, I can remember him costing us the FA Cup final in 2018, and perhaps
I remember that.
He wasn't good enough for United, regardless of the sentiment there, and that's and it wasn't on Phil Jones because he was obviously one of our better players last night, but and how stupid it was that the 2 major attacking moments that we had, the disallowed goal and the free kick at the end, both came from Phil Jones surging forward, which was such a nonsense. But I don't know if I felt the same optimism as everyone did at kickoff. The shape of the team, it concerned me a little bit that Fernandes was still, obviously was suspended for Burnley, but that he was left on the bench because of this new shape that Ragnick was trying. And there's one part of me, Ed, I try and look on the optimistic side of it, and I thought, well, we won the other night and we scored 3 goals in the first half, and as controlled as United could be, or could be with the midfield that they've got, or have been for a year or so, it wasn't a very controlled second half against Burnley, but it was as controlled as we've seen United do it. So I thought, all right, fair enough. He's a manager who's rewarding, he's rewarding performance and consistency.
Yes.
So I saw the value in that, but then very quickly you could see Wolves on Burnley. They played football.
Much better team,
14 shots in the first half, which was, I mean, they looked like scoring a few times as well. They were absolutely cutting through as they were.
As many shots as they'd had in their last 5 matches combined or something like that.
They were good. They were really good. They were bossing in midfield. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same age-old argument that we could have Neves and Moutinho. You would have them in our midfield over.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, they've done that to us time and time again,
Yeah.
haven't they, over the last few years, those two? Just it feels like a pattern that's repeated and a pattern we haven't learnt from, or at least it's a pretty boring argument to say United are lacking in midfield, but it really was a donut shape last night. There were midfielders in there, but Matic is gone. I mean, it's my opinion. I'm not dumping on him for the sake of it, but he's gone as a player in the Premier League. He just can't. He gets overrun because he hasn't got the legs anymore. And McTominay's performance went from outstanding against Burnley in a more attacking sense, I think, more as an 8, to being just overrun and outclassed against Wolves, and his just personal performance wasn't very good. And so, Ragnick changed the shape, as you mentioned, went from this sort of narrow 4-2-2-2-2 to what looked like an old-fashioned 4-2-4, basically.
Yeah.
With all these players piling forward and nothing in the middle. And it just meant that Wolves, it was so easy for them to transition against us and just pick us off, which it did all the time. And then Ragnick switched it to like a 3-5-2 with Jadon Sancho as left wing back, and I've never seen this before in my life. And where does the goal come from? I think Sancho had gone off by that time. It was Marcus Rashford who's left wing back. Yeah. It comes from Adama Traore, and Bruno Lage is clearly a smart coach. He spotted it, and Traore broke, and he'd done that a couple of times previously, hadn't he?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is with Traore as well. I mean, this was one problem that I have, not one problem, but Ragnick coming in the middle of the season, perhaps he's not familiar with all the players in the Premier League and stuff like that.
Yes.
Traore, I know he's got his qualities and we all know about him, but he's very much a player that could go under the radar to a coach like Ragnick because he plays for a club like Wolves. But he'd done that to us at Molineux, by the way. Traore had done it 4 or 5 times, and we were so lucky to get away with a clean sheet in that game. And to win. So you did know, from the moment that he changed that shape, it was very much a case of, well, United need to score probably 2 goals because they're going to see where the space is and they're going to exploit it. You mentioned Matic, and the thing that I've noticed about him, and it goes back probably about a year to it, because we played Arsenal the first game of 2021, right? And we played Matic and Fred. Well, the Solskjaer played Matic and Fred in the middle. And it was something I'd noticed then, but it's more prominent every time you see him play now, Matic. It's not like he plays in the midfield too. He gravitates towards the middle to try and compensate for the lack of his pace. And that creates a massive problem for the player who's next to him because they have to fill in all this space around him.
Yes, yeah.
Like Fred against Arsenal last year it made him look really bad. And it was the same for McTominay. He was trying to do 50 different things and none of them successfully. You saw him lunging into tackles, trying to set the tone of the play, moving further forward, and he couldn't do it, and he was quite often out of position. United have a few problems like that, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, that because of the scattergun transfer policy over the last sort of 6 or 7 years, where the next player that's signed doesn't seem to complement the last one, wherever they are in the system, that it's a mismatch of stuff. And when Traore came on, you knew the first thing he was going to do was exploit all that space around Luke Shaw.
Yeah, and he did. And then Shaw by that time, I think I'm right in saying, was kind of left of the 3 centre-backs and Rashford at left wing-back. And it was and just shortly before that, Matic had got the most predictable yellow card of the night, trying to chase Traore down. Yeah. And then his Traore creates the goal, and Moutinho scores from the second phase, and it's a good strike and all of that. Yeah. But it just felt so inevitable by that time. The problems came before that, didn't they? They came with partly to do with the shape and the system and the personnel, and partly to do with just a lack of quality in midfield. And you kind of feel like we have this thing post-Ferguson, and I kind of understand why both fans and the board do this. They kind of assign a messianic quality to the manager. He's the man who can come and fix everything. And Ragnick, as smart as he is and as good as the work he's done is at Hoffenheim and Schalke and the Red Bull clubs, he can't miraculously fix everything. He's had hardly any training sessions still. Carrington was closed for a week or so. He's had international break. He's come in the middle of a whole bunch of fixtures. What any coach will tell you when you work with them is it's plan, execute, analyze, repeat. Plan, execute, analyze, repeat over and over. And that's how you get, say, the City level of kind of shape where you can put players in, pull players out, and it just functions. And United are miles and miles away from that. And it's going to take Ragnick the whole length of his time at United as coach to put some kind of functional shape. And then on top of that, you have, and we can't not talk about it, you have the, as Shaw called out, the kind of lack of intensity and aggression and purpose, that was almost the most shocking thing. I don't buy any of this kind of social media chat about Ragnick. Oh, he's already failed and he doesn't know how to get the best out of these players and he's changing stuff. And yes, of course he's tinkering because he's trying to fix problems. And there are too many problems and too many trade-offs for him to be able to miraculously fix and to coach them out. And so the most shocking thing was the fact that United didn't press at all last night. There was no intensity for the second ball. It felt so trite, like talking about aggression and intensity, and fans will often translate that to kind of passion. He was right, wasn't he, Shaw? Aside from the shape being weird and the tactics, probably Ragnick was outthought by Brind'Lage last night. The thing that you expect, that Roy Keane always called out, was, well, you can only beat them with equality once you've matched them for work rate and aggression and intensity.
Yeah.
And the thing that Ragnick wants is the press, and there's none of it. It's just didn't exist. And that's got to be the players just not doing it. And that was shocking.
Yeah, it is. And what's concerning about it is that you've got this culture of lack of accountability in United's players.
Yeah.
And it spreads right through. I mean, there's probably only two players, I think, who take an accountability in the performances, and that's De Gea and Ronaldo. They seem like genuinely they've got their own personal standards of wanting to, you know what I mean? They know what it takes to represent the club in a successful team. So they know how far the standard is away from that. Whereas you got someone like Shaw coming out and saying what he said. It is concerning because it still looks like finger pointing. It doesn't look like he's saying, I'm part of the problem. He's trying to say that 8 or 9 other players are the problem, and it's like, no,
it did kind of sound like that, didn't it? Yeah,
it really didn't. Look, it's all right coming across and sounding downbeat because he did. He sounded like, and that's the problem is that a lot of people will look into that and say, well, he seemed really crushed by the defeat, but you're right. I mean, I've often thought about the absurdity of taking Roy Keane back for 6 months, which would never happen because Ferguson's so powerful at the club at the moment, but. Yeah, I'm not talking about a long-term thing or saying that Keane's a marvellous coach or anything like that. And maybe this just comes across like that old-fashioned stereotype football fan and wanting something to hark back to what it was 20 years ago. But to put someone in there who will give it to the players straight, because I think that, I don't know if Solskjaer certainly, he didn't do any of it. He was very much a so positive manager. But some of these players, they need a proper reality check because they're looking... You can't turn the calendar year at United as we are, especially this season, because at this start of the season, as unrealistic as it was, everyone was tipping us for the title. Now, I don't think we could have done that with this midfield, but we finished second last season.
Yes.
So there's a fair amount. Might have been a little bit of a false position in front of Liverpool and Chelsea, but it was enough to say, no, that was last season's squad. You've got Varane, Ronaldo, Sancho added to that. You've got an opportunity to really push on, and they've massively regressed. And yes, Solskjaer paid the price for that. But now you've turned the calendar year and a few games into seeing this squad under this new manager, and you're starting to see that finger pointing, that lack of accountability, ability, which we were all saying, Ed. We suspected it was there anyway.
Yeah. I think you're right. De Gea and Ronaldo, they're senior players. They've been at the club. Well, Ronaldo's come back. He's been at the elite level his entire career. 20 years at the elite level. And De Gea, now one of the senior players at the club. Their personal standards don't always meet what they want, of course. Ronaldo's old now, and he's a certain kind of player now. And that's maybe a problem Ragnick has to think about tactically, because going back to the press, there's no trigger there.
Just to put on that Ronaldo thing, you're quite right in that it wasn't like a universal thing in the team. Fernandes does it automatically, but there's no real discipline in what he's doing.
Yes.
You're quite right with Ronaldo. Last night, it was very much an emotional response. When the crowd was getting agitated, Ronaldo seemed to sort of get affronted by that, and so he would press. But it was very much like this is a last case. Oh, look what you're making me do. You're making me press of all people. That's how he came across. Like,
it does feel like that. I mean, he the first game under Ragnick, he did, and we were like, "Wow, look at Ronaldo!" And now it feels like he was being the tryhard for the new teacher. And
Exactly.
I'm being unfair because he is a senior player and he does have standards that he wants to meet, and the players should respect that. He has caused challenges tactically, even with the goals he scores. And so maybe the two things are slightly different, but you're absolutely right. The standards throughout the team way below the quality of the players. And in a sense, that's what Luke Shaw was saying. Now, it did sound like it's finger pointing because he didn't say, and I. He said, we're not all together, which was, Jesus, that is damning, isn't it? We're not all together. And you could read that in a way as he's pointing at Ronaldo, if you want to talk about it as a very narrow thing about the pressing and the aggression. Maybe it's others who want to coast. And I think it's fairly obvious. There are some people in the United squad who are quite happy picking up their 100 grand a week or whatever. I don't think there's anyone who's that poor in the United squad, 150 grand a week to coast, because there's no accountability from the top. The manager's going to change in 6 months' time. The manager changes every 2 years anyway now. The executives are quite happy to sign celebrity players, not really thinking about any kind of continuity around it, but thinking about clicks. And I know that's, again, kind of reductive as a piece of analysis, but it is the club's mentality. Players have to be a good marketing signing as well as something on the pitch. There's no single vision. Like Murtagh, is he really empowered as director of football? I don't know. I don't know how that works when Ragnick's a consultant.
That's the thing, isn't it, Ed? But you've said that, and Fletcher coming in as a technical director now. When we didn't have Murtagh and Fletcher, that was for 3 years. Everyone was saying, "No, we need one. We need a technical director." And now there's no clarity on what they're actually doing.
Fletcher's on the side of the pitch. He's the only technical director in European football that's on the side of the pitch pointing at players.
Yeah, it's like, what there's no clarity from the club to us, or even there doesn't seem to be any internal clarity on what they're doing.
I don't think there is. I'm sure there's uncertainty. And look, I have some sympathy for Ragnick here as well, because he lost Carrick and McKenna, and he didn't want to lose either.
Yeah.
And so we have him and Armas come in. It's a new coaching team. They're shorthanded. They're in a really difficult situation with a lot of games, a lot of intense games, COVID and all of that. So I have a lot of sympathy. It's a really hard situation to come into. And I think he's been fairly clear about expectations. One thing he does have, we'll see whether he's a good coach, but he has clarity of thought. He's very clear. He wants to create an identity. He doesn't know what that is yet, I think.
Yeah.
But given the 3 different systems he's used so far. And I'm sure he wants to create a certain brand of football. Now, the football last night was completely the opposite of what we expect. We expect high intensity, high press, fast on the transitions, the kind of football that the Red Bull clubs produce. Everyone knows what that is. And it was the opposite last night. It was misplaced sideward passes, slow. And the players that you expected to be the ones that were intense and were quick were either missing Bruno or put in a really poor performance, Sancho. And some of that we can forgive because he was playing at left wing back for the second half, or at least part of the second half. But nothing is to expectation yet. But I think there are a lot of caveats. And so I'm coming more to the point where I'm rarely at, which is looking at the players and going, wow, probably the lack of bounce under the new manager is your fault, guys. A new guy and they're still not intense enough.
Yeah, there's a historical problem at United. And I know you like a bit of Mourinho bashing, Ed, so I'm sure
I love it. I love it. Not as much as Paul does. He loves it even more. So
this one's for you then, Paul. And this is a thing that I always attribute to remember when we were chasing for the Europa League final and we were still in a good shout of getting into Champions League via the league, and Mourinho just decided somewhere in the middle of March that, I'm just going to put all my eggs in the Europa League basket. And, he basically started resting players for the league games. Like Arsenal and Spurs we basically threw away. Now, you mentioned Keane earlier in Keane's standards, and there was a quote I wanted to mention. It's in his autobiography. He's talking about and I'm not going to swear, so you can save your filter for this one. But he's dropping a few F-bombs in about after he first signed for United, he was playing against Swindon and Norwich, and there was a lot of aggression in those games, and he was getting insulted by this because he was like, well, why are you trying so hard? If you were trying this hard for every game, you wouldn't be playing for Swindon or Norwich. Now, fast forward to the Mourinho era, these games that I'm talking about. Obviously, the issue there was that Mourinho was basically saying to the players, he was giving them an excuse. He's saying that when you're at this end of the season, if there's no big trophies to play for, then these games aren't big to you. But the problem that he's got at United, and it's a very unique problem for very big clubs, and I don't know how many other clubs, because I don't support them, I only see it at United, that for the opponent, and I'm not, this might come across as like very, very biased towards United because I'm a United fan.
Sure.
But people, the opponents, and I know this to be from the cases of talking to the many United players over generations through the youth team, reserves, first team, and then from when they move elsewhere. And this is going back to 60s, 70s, right through to present day, that they've always been startled by the fact that it's a cup final for the opponent and how much of a cup final it becomes for the opponent. You know, what they can't understand when they're on the opponent's side. Why are you playing this good against United? All that sort of stuff, the psychological aspects of that. So you've got from Keane's and Ferguson's day, which was never a problem, then to Mourinho then going selective about it, saying, no, you can pick and choose the games you turn up for because these are the games that I think are important.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's a culture in United that's going to be massive for Ragnick to turn around, because now you've got the business end of the season, but there's nothing for United to fight for. They can coast in this period of, even before the game yesterday, you're having people saying, oh, well, Arsenal and Spurs are in good form, aren't they? That already feels like an alarm bell for these players, thinking, we could probably get away with fifth or sixth here because nobody expects us. We can write the rest of this season off and turn up. And I do think that's a massive problem.
If you remember the back end of that Europa League winning season, United lost a bunch of games in a row in the league. And because Mourinho had done exactly what you say, right? He'd given them an excuse, said, you don't need to win these. And he beat an Ajax side that was up and coming, but not as good as it became. And he beat them with a very, specific tactical plan, which was Mourinho's thing. It was dreadful, that final. Yeah. But the larger point about giving players the excuse, I think you're right. And right now, they've got plenty of excuses.
Yeah.
New manager who's not going to be there in 6 months' time if it doesn't work out. Other teams up and coming, nothing to play for. They're still going to get their bonuses.
Yeah.
They're still going to get their pay packets. They will take a pay cut next season if United aren't in the Champions League. I don't know how many of them are motivated by that. Maybe it doesn't matter. Extra 20% on 15 million a year. Maybe it's not life-changing, is it? So that's money's maybe not for them. Yeah, for them. For everyone else, it's So maybe money's not enough of a motivator. Maybe glory's not enough of a motivator. Maybe they realise United are a club that isn't going to be challenging for the Premier League anytime soon, and they're happy to live in something in another world. Now, that's not the case for everyone, and I'm sure Ronaldo doesn't want to be at a team that's not winning. Maybe at his stage of his career, he's just kind of accepted that, but I don't think so, really. I mean, he's got other problems, but I don't think that's one of them. And there are plenty of players at United that have never won anything or anything of note, really. And maybe they don't seem hungry enough. I mean, I'm sure Bruno is, and it's worrying tactically for him right now because he doesn't fit in Ragnick's preferred system.
Mm.
But he's also, I'd be thinking, he's been here 2 years. He wants to see progression. He's a top player. Plenty of elite clubs would want him. Do we get to a point, if he's in and out of the team, that he doesn't want to be at United? I can kind of see that coming. I had a back and forth on Twitter with a few people about Bruno because his performances this season have dropped off a bit. But he's still United's. He creates the most chances, the most big chances, has the most assists, the most expected assists, most shot-creating actions, and the most goal-creating actions, right? So he is by far double on goal-creating actions. Right?
Yeah.
So in the chain of a goal coming. And I think something like Luke Shaw is the next one after that.
Yeah.
So he is absolutely central, no matter his performances dropping off, to United's ability to score goals and create something. And now suddenly he's in a situation where he doesn't fit. And he's also central to the leadership of this team. He's the one driving them on. all the time. And if there are players coasting, and there are players coasting, and Bruno's in and out of the team, God, it's a bad message, isn't it? And I don't know how Ragnick fixes that problem. I don't know how he fixes the problem of lack of quality in midfield, the overweighting of the squad towards attacking players because he can't have them all in the team at the same time, players coasting, and the fact that he's only got 6 months or 5 months left on his deal at United and then becomes some kind of consultant, probably with not much power. It seems like a horrible situation that leads to a really bad outcome.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing as well. When everyone was campaigning, and the people I'm talking about, I'm not talking about you, there's that toxic element of the support who were really goading, really trying to pour fuel on the fire when it was obvious that it was going to end with Solskjaer, and they made a lot of noise. And United, like it or not, they're paying attention to social media these days, so they're seeing all this toxicity. They're ramping it into the overall atmosphere of the club. And I'm not saying that they're responsible for getting Solskjaer sides, and he had to go, by the way. I'm not arguing that point. The point I'm going to make is about my reservation about why I was so reserved and why I was so concerned about Solskjaer going, is because we were still fairly stable and we were still progressing, and Solskjaer did still have a track record of turning around difficult runs. I agree fully that I thought this one was 1 too far for him and it was too difficult to turn around. But in making the change, you've got so many unpredictable elements, and you just mentioned one there. So everyone would have thought, oh, well, now you've made the change, you're just going to bring in an experienced manager and all the good things will stay good and then we'll kick on forward and all the bad things will get better. But it doesn't work like that in football, because a new manager comes in with this brand new system. And like you said, Bruno Fernandes, who's been the outstanding player for 2 years, now suddenly looks like he could be collateral damage of this new regime. And on by the way, all these other winger players which we've invested so heavily in, the likes of Sancho and the likes of Rashford, in terms of time that we've spent with him, and Greenwood even, like, there's no natural place for them in this new system. And it's, what did you want? Because you've got to accept that when you've got a new manager coming in, he's going to have his own ideas. They're not going to fit in with your ideal version of what's going to, in terms of the way that people were presuming that everything was going to get better and United were going to start challenging again. It doesn't work like that in football. So you were always going to sacrifice the positive, and people didn't want to say that Ollie had done anything positive, but he did. And now you've sacrificed all that because there's a lot of good that we're not seeing at United.
There was absolutely lost value there in Solskjaer going, and again, I got to the point where, like everyone else, I believed he should go as well. But I think I mentioned it earlier. I think there is a kind of belief, both amongst supporters and the boards, that a manager is the messiah, come and fix everything.
Yeah.
And it's why we've had this debate on this pod a few times over this season about what is the value of the structure of the club versus the coach. And I think a brilliant coach like Ferguson or like Guardiola or like Klopp can make obviously can make a lot of difference, but they're in the best position to succeed if they have the right structure around them. United still don't have that, even with Fletcher and Murtaugh, because of the lack of clarity around what their job and their roles are. They still don't have that structure. So Ragnick is not in the best position to succeed. And you lay on top of that COVID, coaches going, a squad full of players who are willing to coast and are happy with failure. And it's a recipe for disaster. It really is. And look, maybe this works for the board, right? Another interim coach, if it all goes south, and it looks like that's going to happen, but we'll see this season, they can just dump him. He becomes a consultant. He's €5 million a year or whatever he's getting. It's a drop in the ocean. He'll probably have no real power because the real power lies in Tampa. And they'll move on to whatever Messiah is coming next, whether that's Ten Hag or Poch or Sam Bloody Allardyce. I'm joking about that one. Ed Woodward, if you're listening, that's not a suggestion. So maybe we're feeling negative because of the performance and the result last night. I'm sure we are. But there's a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed at the club in order that whatever coach is in place can succeed. And I don't have a lot of faith in the club fixing all of that. And maybe we'll all feel better after United spank Aston Villa in the FA Cup on Monday night. Maybe we will.
Maybe. Right. But I think the concern, by the way, it can be downbeat after a defeat. But You remember when Bielsa brought Athletic Bilbao to Old Trafford and they played really well and they played magnificent? You took your hat off to them. You just went, well, you applauded them and thought, you didn't get down. Well, you obviously downbeat that we lost the game and we were eliminated from Europe. But at the time, you don't feel, oh God, well, I saw that coming and I'm going to feel negative about the future now. But we saw Wolves coming to Old Trafford and outplaying United. That wasn't off the cards. And then when we saw it happen, it was like, well, it's embarrassing because at the end, I always feel more embarrassed when I see the time go up and know that the opponent's actually happier for the time because they can score again. And they were just controlling the game. And that was the thing. It was predictable. You could see it coming. You could see the game panning out exactly as it did. And it did. And you could forecast, especially in the second half after the formation change. And that was a little worrying thing for me, is that Ragnick perhaps isn't fine-tuned in everything to do with the English game, because what they did was quite predictable from the outset. Everyone around us on K-Stand was saying, well, when they bring Traore on, it's going to be a completely different game. And it was.
And it was. I know we haven't talked about the game much because it was dreadful. We've been avoiding it, but that was predictable. And as I said, I think Bruno Lage, he's outthought Ragnick in that he's won the tactical battle there and the outcome was inevitable as a result. But Wolves may have won anyway, just because they had more quality last night and they had a plan that's had 6 months to brew and get into place. And United don't have that at the moment. And Ragnick is still trying to find the answers. And that looks like tinkering. And United paid the price. In terms of players, is there any positives? Dave made a bunch of saves again. He seems to be back to something that looks like his best. He's having to be. He can't coast at the moment. He doesn't really have any competition, but maybe just the presence of a goalkeeper like Henderson who could come in is enough motivation for him. Varane got another game. That was good. Luke Shaw's back. I guess he wasn't very good last night, but he's back in the team, recovered from his concussion. I don't know what to say about Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I thought it was a disaster last night. He's not done anything this season to justify his position. Not that Diego Dallo has either, really, but there were some positives in the few games he got, at least attacking. Jones, he's the story of the night, isn't he? You mentioned him already, and he came back after 707 days away from the team and put in a creditable performance. And it hasn't always been that case, and I hope I haven't contributed to the pylon over the years about him, but I definitely, as a player, not as a human, as a player, he's been a waste of space for several years at United because he's just never fit. And when he was fit, they weren't very good performances. But, for a one-off game last night, lots of positives for him.
No, absolutely, yeah. And you want to see, if he's going to go out either January, let's say that this is an opportunity for him to have shown that he can still play either Premier League or Championship level. He didn't let himself down, but we've got to remember that he wasn't good enough for United. You're quite right. All the other things to take from the sometimes the positives that you can take from a game are what the things that you don't try again. So Sancho, let's not try him at wing back again. Let's not bring Rashford on at left wing back and move him to right wing back. I feel when I feel really bad for players is when their confidence is so shot that the bad things they do look like they're deliberate.
Yes.
Like the bad pass.
And that happened to Rashford last night. I think he went on a dribble and then there was a simple wall pass that he was trying to play in the box and he got it all wrong and missed the player from about 5 yards, the pass. And it was just one example of where he's at the moment.
Yeah, the Bruno pass as well, where he quite near the end where he could have played Bruno in and over it by about 30 yards. And in that circumstance, you said don't play Rashford at right wing back. That's fairly obvious, but then you just feel sorry for him that his confidence is that shot that he couldn't do something that's fairly simple for a player of his ability.
I hope he's too good for this to continue, but it's been a long malaise. He had the season disrupted by the back injury, and then last season disrupted by the shoulder injury and the foot injury, and he should never have gone to the Euros. He should have been recuperating, and he should have been ready for the start of this season. And for very understandable reasons, Southgate wanted him in the squad as an impact player, didn't really use him like that, and Rashford wanted to go. Completely understandable, but it was the wrong decision for everybody involved, and Rashford's suffering for that.
Yeah.
And we've seen players' careers disrupted by injury. Phil Jones.
Yeah.
You know, Ferguson called him the greatest player, or had the talent to be the greatest player since Duncan Edwards, etc., and so on, right? Become a trope now. But I really hope that doesn't happen to Rashford. We want him to be improving and progressing, and the disruption at coaching level is not going to help that, because he's got the talent. He was, before he signed a new contract, his agent was checking in with some of Europe's biggest clubs. I think it's well established now that Barcelona were interested.
Yeah.
I mean, they would dumped 100 million on anyone at the time. So he's got the talent, and if injuries, tactical stuff get in the way, and confidence get in the way of that, there'll be a real shame.
Yeah.
But there's just so few positives on the playing front. Maybe Fred's stock has gone up now. He'll be back in the team against Villa, I'm sure. But everyone else, it's really hard. I mean, Greenwood wasn't brilliant last night, but he was bright. And then he was hauled off. And you heard the reaction from the crowd, right? Old Trafford has become more tetchy over the years. There was a time that no one would get booed. It doesn't matter how bad you were. And that's not true anymore. And that decision was not greeted well by the fans for understandable reasons. And Ragnick explained it afterwards, saying, he had to choose between Cavani and Greenwood. I mean, there were other choices he could make.
Yeah.
But that's how he framed it. And so it was unlucky on him. But just so few positives from the players' point of view after last night, after feeling okay after the Burnley game. I said a good 45 minutes against Burnley, and now we feel we're back at the start again, and the pressure's on, because the one trophy left for United to win, assuming that United are not going to win the Champions League, is the FA Cup, and that's going to become important this season, I think, for some kind of hope, or the fourth place trophy, and that's looking doubtful.
Yeah, well, it's a funny thing with the FA Cup, because I mean, I think with United, I suppose every club's going to say this, but when you've got a romantic history with it, and we both grew up watching United win it a lot of times in an era where the cup final day was still such a big thing that they would have coverage starting at 9 o'clock in the morning. So you still grew up with that. So it does mean a lot to a lot of us as fans. We're not quite in this era of younger fans who just see it as one of the B trophies kind of thing. I guess it is, to all intents and purposes, one of those, but I still see it as a fairly major trophy. Now, it is all about the way that you go about winning that trophy in particular, although, let's say, the League Cup or the FA Cup, because it did nothing for Mourinho when he won the League Cup, and it did nothing for Van Gaal because he was sacked while he was holding it. So it depends on how you actually deem that progress. Now, the funny thing is with Van Gaal, and I know we're talking about current events, but if we're talking about tracking how Ragnick's going to progress and what's going to define his progress or be identified as that, such as that it is, considering that he's probably going to be replaced in May anyway. But the thing what was good for Van Gaal was that he was bringing through a load of kids, and they were helping to galvanise this atmosphere around the club when really everything, the football itself, was actually terrible. So it really depends on the circumstances in which we get this drive going forward and hopefully get a good cup run that ends with success. But I think in terms of putting a pin in something and saying we are moving somewhere, it's vital for the club to win a trophy because they haven't won one for 4 years. So regardless of anything, for everyone involved, this is from the players, their pride, the manager to say that the players to say that they deserve to be mentioned in the breath as these Manchester United players, because I've been seeing things online today on social media when I was checking in, and people are sort of saying, well, this might go down as one of the worst groups of United players ever. And I was thinking about it, and certainly post-war, and United were relegated, remember? In the 70s. They might do. They might, and when you look at the talent that's in the team.
Yeah. Well, it's all relative to expectations, isn't it? And
exactly.
So in the 80s, when United were dreadful, all we expected was an FA Cup run and maybe being decent in the league. And there were 2 seasons at the beginning of the Ferguson era when United finished, 13th and 11th. I mean, the sky would fall in, the world would end. It would be a Hollywood-level disaster if United were to finish 11th now. So expectations are different, even given the 8 and a bit years after Ferguson has gone and the relative failures of this period. Younger fans might not associate this, but I think for confidence, for status, for not being ranked as one of the worst United squads ever, the FA Cup is vitally important. And then just short term, just after that disaster of Newcastle, to create some kind of momentum under the new manager.
Yeah.
It needs both a performance and a result against Villa on Monday.
Yeah.
And none of those guaranteed, are they? It's important for Villa too, because they're safe. They're not going to get relegated. They are trying to be a comfortable mid-table side. They've had a decent start, and him who will not be named under the new manager, the Liverpool manager in waiting.
You've danced everywhere around saying the name there.
Yeah, I know. Ugh.
Yeah. No, yeah.
The lad who got himself sent off after 10 seconds. That one.
That lad. What you're saying is right, because Villa are probably looking at all of those factors and saying, well, United are probably a little bit vulnerable. And the thing is, and I don't want to be negative, guys, so if you're listening to this, don't come at me for being negative with this, but
at Wayne S. Barton, if you have feedback.
Yeah, do. In fact, do. But the facts of the matter is that this United team don't respond. They don't respond to setbacks. I don't know what it is about. I know that, yes, form picks up and everything like that, but they're not a responsive team. Ferguson's team were always responsive. If they lost like 2 or 3 games, it dropped 3 or 4 players and then they batter someone 5 or 6-0. Yeah. This team doesn't have it within them to respond in that kind of way. They just get.
I mean, they all trot out their social media posts. I haven't actually looked, but I'm sure a bunch of them will. We have to bounce back from this. We go on.
Exactly.
We're very sorry. The fans deserve better. We're going to try harder. It's a process, blah, 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 and it's all valueless, isn't it?
They will know. The Villa players will know, because he who shall not be named will be drumming it into them. This is a vulnerable United team who feel sorry for themselves. And those Villa players, because of the manager, will probably give an extra 10% anyway. Feeling that there's a scalp on for them. Because it's played at Old Trafford as well, all that sort of stuff. I'm feeling quite pessimistic about it for those reasons. I really hope that United, this is one of those occasions where this is a long time that Ragnick's got to work with the squad as a whole, probably the longest period he's going to have, really.
Yeah.
So really, let's hope that one of the first things he fixes is that reaction.
Shaw said it in his interview. That was one of the other interesting parts of the interview. It was, apart from the sort of finger pointing and the mea culpa, the lack of mea culpa.
Yeah.
He also said, we've got a whole week of training. And then he said, hopefully this is something the manager can help us fix. Like, oh.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Yes, it is on the manager to make the calls about who plays, who doesn't, to run the training sessions, and he's very hands-on there, absolutely. But Shaw is there looking for a solution and not looking within, and that was pretty worrying. But also kind of calling out what you're saying. They do have a week. They better get it right. The pressure is definitely on. Yeah. So, what kind of team do you reckon will be? I mean, can Ragnick afford to rotate a lot and bring in some kids? I mean, there aren't that many kids he could actually bring in because of the bubbles and stuff, but is he going to do that, or is he going to be a full-strength side, do you reckon?
Can United afford that at all? I don't think that they can. And at a time when he still doesn't know what his best shape or best team is. I mean, you'll see rotation, of course you will, but you've seen all the full-backs play, you've seen all the centre-backs play, you've seen all the midfielders play, so we're still not quite sure what it is.
We'll see whether Lindelof or Maguire are available. They both had Lindelof's got his back problem. Maguire, I can't remember what the problem is there. Hopefully they're available. Eric Bailly's at the Cup of Nations. I don't know whether Phil Jones can play 2 games in a row or not. You'll have to see what the reaction is to that, because his body has not done that for a very long time.
Yeah. No, Ragnick's going to play what he thinks is his strongest team to win the game, because for the reasons we've already mentioned, the FA Cup is crucial. Even for the fact that if he's a manager for 5 months or 6 months, you'd want to say that you'd won a trophy at the end of it, and it's the only one that he could. Well, let's be reasonable. He's not going to win the Champions League, so you never know if the cup run gives you a fair draw, as fair as the City draws in recent years. Then we might have a chance. But the jeopardy of it being a knockout, even though it would go to a replay, the jeopardy of that can change the occasion, as we all know with cup games.
Do we still have replays this season? I guess we do. We haven't cancelled them. No.
I'm pretty sure that they might have brought it in a round earlier to say that, where they do that
from the quarterfinals onwards or something. Yeah.
So
News this week, there's not much really. I mean, apart from Luke Shaw's interesting interview and potentially a side interview with Mark Ogden, ESPN, that we were talking about prior to the show. A couple of loan changes, which were a bit odd. Looks like Axel Tuanzebe is going to Napoli from Villa. He's not been in the team, so yeah, he needs game time. Yeah. And Ethan Laird it seems to be switching from Swansea, where he's been a revelation as one of the most attacking fullbacks in the Championship and played every week, to Bournemouth, which I guess is an upgrade, but a bit odd. And it kind of, the thing that worried me about that one was the reporting which said United will get a larger share of his wages paid and a bigger loan fee.
Yeah.
Are we making decisions about young players based on loan fees and not their development path? That was a bit worrying. Ted Mengi's gone to Birmingham. He needs games.
Yeah.
He's obviously not in the thinking for a spot in the first team at the moment. I think that was it. Any other moves?
There was the club, not on the pitch, but off the pitch, the club said that they were going to look at fixing some internal things at the club, like the ground, like the Wi-Fi, which is notoriously bad, as well, the 3G reception. So we might be able to get WhatsApp.
We'll put some small cells in there and get WhatsApp going. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, when it gets to sort of an hour and 5 minutes before kickoff, because there's that many people around the ground, you don't get the team news. It's very rare that you can get the team news, so you have to be actually in there. So it sounds stupid, but it'd be a welcome change to sort of, it's nice to receive the abuse I get on Twitter a little bit more up to date, because sometimes I have to scroll through 2 hours worth of abuse by the time I can get reception after the game.
Exactly. You want to be called a cunt in real time, not after the fact. Yeah.
It takes the fun out of it. So
there was actually talking about Old Trafford and stuff. There was a report maybe a week ago that, and this is a regular occurrence, this kind of report, that United are looking at expanding and improving Old Trafford and potentially building a development stadium. They own quite a lot of land. They own all the shipping container yards and stuff like that, and a lot of parking space and around Old Trafford. Not the houses behind the South Stand, though, which has always been the problem. Building over the rail track and onto those houses was part of the reason why it was deemed so expensive to expand Old Trafford. I have to say, I looked at that story and looked at how many times I'd seen that exact same story over the last 10 years. It's like 4 or 5 times the exact same story. And it just felt like a distraction. So I will believe it when I see the diggers at Old Trafford and the new seats going in. Yeah. Then I'll believe it. And even then, maybe not until they actually cut the ribbon. So we'll see about that one. Anyway, well, that's it, I guess, for this week. Not the most positive, because we had a game to talk about at least, which was better than last time. Yeah. Not the most positive on the pitch. A lot of problems to fix. Someone put a meme out, done the rounds before. It's that picture of, there's 2 people on a bus. One of them's looking at what looks like some cliffs. He's looking really glum. The other one's looking at the beautiful vista and the sunshine of the hills. And it says, me thinking about United's next game. That's the sunny side. Me actually watching United's next game.
Yeah.
Doesn't half feel like that sometimes. And it very much felt like that yesterday.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, everyone. Patreon backers, stay tuned. We'll talk about the Premier League for 10 or 15 minutes. Everyone else, see you next week.
There's nothing like being in the stands cheering on your favorite team. Game Time is your hack to unlocking amazing tickets in just a few taps. Plus, their Game Time guarantee means you can trust you'll get 100% authentic tickets at the best price. Fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay. Get the best deals on sports tickets. Download the Game Time app and create an account to start searching for tickets to upcoming games and events. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time.